All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar. It's sponsored by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulations, Business Licensing, Compliance, and Technical Assistance Program. I'm Dr. Imani Brown. I'm the Director of the Social Equity Program. Now, BLC programming is designed to assist social equity entrepreneurs in the City of Los Angeles with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful and compliant cannabis business. This installment of our 2024 webinar series focuses on acquiring compliant real estate. Now, before we get started, let's take a minute to review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed only on the DCR's Learning Management System after the editing process. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during the session. However, you will be able to see and hear all of the panelists. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or commenting on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum, and please keep your questions focused on tonight's topic. Now, we would appreciate you asking questions about tonight's subject matter in the Q&A chat box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a Q&A session where you will also get responses during the last portion of tonight's event. You are encouraged to utilize the Q&A box at the bottom of your pane of your Zoom screen. If you use the Q&A box for questions, everyone will be able to see the questions when they are answered. Now, finally, please note that tonight's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. Now, this information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code nor constitute legal advice. If you have any specific questions outside of tonight's topic, please call 213-978-0738 during the department's business hours, which are Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, or to speak to a DCR representative. And now I'd like to welcome tonight's presenter, Elias Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez is Chief of Staff and President of Deodate, a real estate management consulting company where he handles corporate real estate engagements for Fortune 500 companies and regional real estate portfolios. In his half-decade with Deodate, he has been instrumental in acting as a project manager in over 100 projects with public and corporate clients. Good evening, Alliance. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. We'll be discussing the acquiring compliant real estate portion, and we'll save the questions for the end. Feel free to put any questions into the chat and we'll try to answer them at the end of this slideshow. Today, we'll be going over acquiring compliant real estate presentation. We'll be covering a variety of different important market elements, issues, and processes. These will assist you in securing the right compliant location for your business. And along with this, we'll also discuss the process for new and current participants in the social equity program. We understand that there is a slight difference, but overall the processes are the same. We're going to talk about anything that you can expect securing the right location and the typical pitfalls and some of the common problems that we have some of our applicants go through. For today's presentation, we'll be reviewing the following topics. The first one is going to be in industry-specific issues. It's a new and exciting time for cannabis, retail, and production. However, the many landlords, brokers, and cities, they don't fully understand yet what all the details are of the operation, and they may have a lot of existing questions and perceptions of the cannabis industry. We'll discuss tonight the specific issues and what it means to bring a cannabis tenant into their location and what are the best ways to counter these different issues. The next topic that we'll discuss as well will be the site selection best practices. Most individual owned cannabis businesses, they'll take it upon themselves to understand the best location to start their business. They'll usually have a specific area that they'd like to dive into and start their businesses. In this section, we'll share some helpful information and tips that are typically used by larger corporate retailers to minimize any risk they use to find the best location for their new enterprises. So we'll bring up the what the bigger professionals usually do and to create your success as well during this process. Another topic that we'll discuss is the process of negotiating a lease. We'll provide an overview of the commercial real estate leasing process, specifically tailored to cannabis-related tenants, new participants and older participants as well. This will include working with outside professionals such as attorneys and brokers, and we'll discuss on how to look in the right areas and along with putting together the right team. It's always great to put a team together to help you push that forward. We'll also be discussing the lease strategies, do's and don'ts. We'll share hints of nuggets or important nuggets of information that'll help you during your process. We'll also walk you through, again, the common pitfalls and mistakes that are made along the way. These pitfalls tend to complicate things, but we'll discuss how to counter these. We'll also discuss the offer process. This is typically after you're able to find the right location and decide you want to go forward with it. We'll take you through the traditional offer process from the initial letter of intent all the way through the lease document and understanding what those mean. And I believe in the chat, they'll be adding a couple of resources to our next webinar, along with things the BLC will be able to provide. And if possible, I'll also share my email at the end to, in case anybody has any questions, or if we don't answer your questions today, we could potentially answer them later on through the email. Now, to begin with our first topic, we'll be going over the industry-specific issues. For many years, cannabis sales was associated and related to illegal activity. While there's been much accomplished over the last decades and informing the public as to healing and medicinal benefits to cannabis, there's still a lot of individuals out there, mainly landlords, who continue to carry this misconstrued idea of what it is to have a cannabis tenant and some of the incorrect fears that they have on bringing these tenants. With this in mind, it is helpful to enter this lease process with understanding some of these issues and some of these stigmas. The first issue is going to be the site selection. In most normal cases, the site selection is the most important component, as it's going to drive where your location is and where the clienteles are going to be coming to you. In the cannabis industry, site selection is a little bit more complex than your traditional tenant. It requires the same level of requirements as any other tenant, but then there's some added caveats to there, whether it's through the regulations of the state or the city. There's quite a few different elements. Some of these elements are going to pertain to the number of permits within an area. Some of them are going to contain restricted zones altogether. We're only able to permit certain users to go into an area, and then it gets allocated to them as well. And a couple of further requirements are going to be with the building grade, the security, the access, and the visibility. And what do we mean by that? When looking into a building for site selection, we have to make sure that it's up to code and it meets all the requirements set by the city. Each city is going to have different requirements, so it's always best to check in, ask your questions, meet with your advisors, and discuss what are those requirements, whether it's going to be additional security, if it's going to be a safe room, easy access for other employees. We need to really understand and hone in what is the city asking for us to get that permit and to get that approval into that location. Along with that, the access and visibility. We want you guys to succeed. So one of the important things is finding a location that clientele can easily get to and understand, be able to visually see you. So whether it's the signs or the marketing, we really want to understand that this location that we're putting, whether it's on the corner, on a main street, that it's easily visible and everyone can see as they're passing by. One of the other complex issues is going to come from landlords. Now, most of the time from our experience, we've seen that landlords are a bit scared. And we have to be able to educate them and let them understand that the value of their building, it comes from three general sources. It's going to be the location of the building, the quality of the building, and the quality of the tenant. When meeting with these landlords, you want to be very transparent and let them know that you're there to only better their location and to add value. What they typically look is they always think that they have a property that's at top of market and everything, but we want to be able to show them that we're a quality tenant and that we're just like any other tenant, just with a couple of additional restrictions. Now, the quality of tenant, it doesn't only speak to the rent that they'll be paying. It's also going to talk about the stability of their business, the stability and growth of the industry, and as well, how do we complement those additional tenants within that shopping center or within those couple of blocks that will be next to. From this standpoint, we can see how some of the landlords may think that leasing a space to a cannabis-related tenant may impact the building value. But we want to show them that we're actually driving clientele to that location, and the surrounding tenants would also benefit from that. They shouldn't have to fear that we will drive other tenants away. What we have to do is be able to educate them that it's no longer, it no longer has the same constraints, that it's much more accepted by society and also the city, that we're part of a legitimate program that's going to allow us to do it the right way, not to complicate any processes for them, and that again, it's like a typical tenant. And landlords tend to think that having that cannabis tenant there is going to bring some type of illicit activity to their building or negative elements. But it's up to us to be able to, first of all, educate them that we can be part of the community, we can interact with them and have some type of synergy along with the same tenants, and overall just make the community a little more well-rounded. Going to our next point, it's going to be the community. Again, like tenants, some cannabis, or like the landlords, some cannabis tenants will face difficult time from community members and community groups that may typically oppose any cannabis-related use within a retail area. These groups tend to add pressure to the city when discussing the licensing process. So we'll be able to discuss how do we engage the community, what type of marketing should we do, what type of outreach, and overall just inviting them to learn about what type of product do we have, the different uses, that it's not just recreational, that there's a lot of benefits to it as well, and just paint them in a better picture. What we tend to notice is individuals who are opposed against it are usually some that either never been around it or don't understand what the use is. So we'll be discussing how to market to them and again, educate and include them into that process. Now, having the full understanding of the various individuals that will be coming across, it'll be the community, the landlords, and overall the city as well. We'll be able to contact them and discuss a better path that'll benefit everyone together. And from understanding these specific problems, it'll lead us to the site selection and how to counteract all these things. So site selection, before leasing or discussing any type of negotiation, we need to understand where are we able to go and what's going to be the best location for your cannabis business. So before you negotiate any space, we need to find the best locations, and that's going to involve about 4 different steps, and understanding what type of team you need to build to create these inventory, create these opportunities, and overall just meet the parameters that are required by the city and also to our business partners or to ourselves, right? We want to be able to succeed and push forward and have longevity in the location that we choose for. So the first one is going to be understanding where you can operate. This is the most important thing. Cannabis is very restrictive in the use form from a physical standpoint. Only certain areas selected within the city allow cannabis-related enterprises. So we need to be sure to focus our search within these areas and not waste any time with locations that will not allow your operation. So what do we mean by that? Within the DCR, if you look up, they usually have a map that has a specific city. In our case, it's going to be the LA city, and they'll have zones that are actually cannabis. They're cannabis friendly, and they'll have a number of permits or allocations for different participating members. What we want to do is give ourselves the best chance and decide which of these locations will we be able to operate, and where do we start looking, and who do we start approaching? You don't want to start the process by not understanding this zoning requirement, because right off the bat, you'll go into a location and they might be okay with it, but then we come to find out that the city didn't approve that area. So we need to understand where can we operate and connect with the city and make sure that, hey, before we enter any type of negotiations or even contact the landlord, will the city allow us to operate? The second topic is the understanding how your clients will get to your location. We've seen this through experience where a very good building will come across the place or across our desk, and our clientele will get very, very excited and saying, this is a perfect building. We can see our shop here. We're able to overall really make it work, and the pricing is well. But we need to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Is the location easy to get to for our clientele? Does it have enough parking access? Is there a freeway nearby? Is there public transportation? All these questions should be asked on a location by location basis to best position yourself for success. So typically what we do with clients is we'll ask them first, what's the zoning that they're gonna like, that they're interested in? After finding out the zoning and checking with the city and seeing that it will be allowed in this area, we'll start catering and deciding which property is going to be the best one for us. So through a search, you'll start seeing available properties for lease or for sale, and we'll start shortlisting those properties and deciding, what are the benefits of coming to this area? One of the things that should be on the top of your list is, do we have enough parking for our employees? Do we have enough parking for our clientele? Along with this is it easily visible, and can people get there? Whether it's through public transportation or through the freeway, is it very easily accessible? We've seen people where they kind of go off to the side streets and hide themselves within industrial locations, and it's a tough building to market. People don't know they're there. They start losing a bit of clientele, and overall, you'll have their own clients say, hey, it's a little bit too hard to go there. We might just go, the one off the main street. If they have parking, I don't have to drive there. I can take the train, or it's right off the freeway. So we really have to take into consideration what's going to be the flow of traffic there. Is there a lot of people walking by? Is it easily visible? And can they have park there as well? We also have to understand the demographics, densities, traffic counts, and any important figures related to the site selection. A pretty good website for this is the US Census website, as well as other resources that can provide you data like Esri, or we've also seen through CoStar. These are usually available to real estate agents, and it'll be able to show you property by property how people live by the location. What type of people are you looking for, whether it's within their age group, how many rent versus how many own, as well as other info such as number of cars that will pass by the location on a daily basis. All of these insights are important to best choose your location. If your average customer is between 18 and 30 years of age with a college education, your agent should be able to cater that to you. They're able to figure out which locations has the highest number of people within this range, or which has the highest density, to ensure that people will walk by or drive by at minimum. And adding these to your parameters when doing a site selection is very helpful. It'll ensure that you have success, that you'll be seen, and overall you'll have plenty of people to choose from, right? Your real estate professional will be able to provide these resources and assist in finding this information. And along with this, we'll speak a little bit more about it later, but you want to build a team who can provide these different things, right? That can provide you all the density and demographics and ensure that the location you pick, there is a flow of traffic altogether. Potentially after the webinar. In the chat, we'll be able to provide some type of resource or attachments, or again, I'll provide my email within the chat, and you guys can message me directly and ask me, what do we believe is the best resources to be able to find these things. Again, it'll be like Census, the Esri, LoopNet, and then other individual cannabis related real estate lists and sites. Now, once deciding where can we place our location, finding the right zoning, understanding the different players like the community, the landlord, the city, what does this typically look like? How are we able to allocate the right team and overall the right parameters to ensure that we'll be able to negotiate a compliant lease? What do we mean by that? The compliant lease is going to ensure that you follow all the rules, that all the parameters are met, and overall just be able to be a successful business in that area. And to begin this process, very important to select the right team to assist you in locating, negotiating, and effectively launching you to your new location. The team that you're going to build is going to be made of multiple individuals. Some of them might already be part of your team, and others might be outsourced or hired experts. For this presentation, we're mainly going to focus on 4 different players in the leasing process that can assist you in facilitating the transaction, but also on the site selection portion. So the main players that we're going to talk about today, they're going to be either outsourced or part of your team, or typically the agent that helps you as well. So the first one is going to be real estate agents and brokers. Real estate agents and brokers, they're licensed professionals who may buy, sell, or lease real estate on behalf of the landlord, investor, or on this case, yourself, the tenant. While a real estate broker or agent license doesn't specify an area of expertise, usually you want to find a professional who is in that niche. Each professional is going to have a different area of focus. For example, the team that we work with, they typically focus on manufacturers, larger corporate entities, but at the same time, we had a small division or a couple of colleagues who were hyper-focused on the cannabis side. You want to be able to find a reputable commercial real estate firm that's going to be very specific to that geographic area, but at the same time, understand what a cannabis retail operation entails. What you want to do is, and we can share that at the end as well, but find a cannabis specific agent and interview a couple of them. You need to be able to understand where is their forte. Do they deal with the retail portion, or do they deal with the distribution side? Asking these questions to these agents will allow you to pick the person you're not only comfortable with, but that's going to be able to successfully allocate a location for there. On top of that, they're going to know the main players within this industry. What they'll be able to do is go into their Rolodex and understand the other agents that are part of this and potentially source an off-market deal, or understand the zoning and understanding where your parameters are. Once you find that they're kind of an industrial or they're industry specialists, we need to be able to understand their fee structure, the process that they use with site selecting, and overall being comfortable with them. The way these agents typically work is you'll be able to interview them. We would typically ask them what type of softwares do they use, how many deals have they worked with that are related to the cannabis industry, and overall, do they have current landlord representatives that are willing to lease out to new and older applicants as well. Typically, they'll have landlords that have worked with different cannabis owners, and they'll understand and work and navigate through price gouging and ensuring that you get a good deal and that you're seen as a typical tenant rather than this premium tenant who is going to open this new cannabis and potentially make a very successful business. You want to have that real estate agent really understand and really educate the landlord in knowing that it's just like any other business. It's going to be the same type of contract with a couple of caveats, and that the process might be a little bit different at the beginning, but overall, once it's stable, they'll be able to move forward and treat you like a typical tenant. So very important to interview the real estate agents that are within the industry. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go with a typical commercial agent who just knows the area well and understands what the parameters are. But we like to focus on the agents that had a lot of experience with it and overall have pushed deals to navigate through those complex problems with the landlords who are typically a little afraid to move forward with the cannabis tenant. The second person on your team is going to be the accountant. In any lease, the landlord's going to ask you for evidence of credit worthiness by the way of financial statements. Most landlords will ask for profit and loss statements, balance sheets, and tax returns. These requests should be assessed on a case by case, but it's important to have an accountant who's going to be able to provide those to you up front and to be very transparent with the landlord. Before going through the leasing process, we recommend speaking to your accountant and understanding what needs to be done before approaching these landlords. So if they have your books and your tax returns ready, then that means that if the landlord ever asks for it, we'll be able to show it and show that we are credit worthy and that we have everything in order as well. Again, along with the accountant, it's important to understand your banker. It may be a good idea to notify your banker that you're in the process of leasing a new and expanded space. Your banker will be able to provide your accountant and also assist you with ledgers and statements, demonstrating any bank balances that you have. In more complex situations, we've seen that landlords may require letters of credit to assist with the lease guarantee process. And along with that, just starting your business and starting a relationship with your banker. We've seen different clientele have a very good relationship with their bank. They're getting ready to allocate some funds to be able to either put down the deposit or get ready for a 5-year lease. Having a good relationship with the banker will be they'll be able to provide all these statements quickly. But again, they might even be able to provide some type of line of credit if you're very upfront and showing them that your business is going to trend within a 5-year time period. They could potentially assist you in either getting the loans or having a good interest rate on those loans and providing some of those funds up front as well. And lastly, not too many tenants think about this up front, but it's good to have a contractor. It's good to have a contractor on your side that's going to help you look at the space that's going to be for lease and understand, will this location have a small or substantial construction work to get it ready and open? It's important to have a very trusted and licensed contractor ready to walk the space with you, assess the situation, provide you with estimates as to the amount of work that's going to be necessary to prepare this space, and overall to negotiate the TIs. What a TI is the tenant improvements or the tenant improvement allowance from the landlord. Think of this as credit paid in cash or waived through rent or work and done on the space. Along with that is we've seen a lot of our clients go into a space, they fall in love with the area, but then they don't have a good understanding of the space. They don't understand that the walls might be structurally unsound, that the roof might need a lot of work. We've had clients run into trouble with the HVAC where the landlord tells them it's in working order, and then they sign a lease that says that the tenant will take care of the HVAC, and then they get stuck with fixing the HVAC, which can be quite expensive, and it could almost be a year's lease worth of rent as well. So having those contractors with you and making the call outs to the space can help you decide, do we have to put a certain amount of funds to this? Are we able to get this up and running within a couple of months? And overall navigate those permits with the city. It takes quite a bit to do a build out with the city. It's just not that they don't want you to build it out, but it's just they have tons of different people coming in trying to get building permits, and we've seen that it can take between 30 to 60 days just to get a response. So having a contractor who's very key on the process, maybe has a couple of contacts and knows how to navigate through building and planning, They will be able to assist you in pulling those permits out, getting the construction open and ready for the time that you believe you can open, and overall just give you a sound building that's going to meet all the parameters from the cannabis department. And typically we ask that they have some type of attorney with them, a real estate professional attorney that's going to assist you in identifying the location. And they don't typically negotiate the business terms, but they do see they read between the lines. They understand what the landlord is asking of you and understanding what type of improvements, abatements, concessions, and overall just the legal terms behind these contracts. Once you're in a lease, it is a legally binding contract. And so you want to be able to follow that so the landlord can't come back later and let you know, hey, you broke the lease or you broke one of the clauses or the insurances weren't met. Having an attorney look over your lease before signing it is typically a good idea. They'll be able to let you know that, hey, this language doesn't make sense. That means that the landlord can do X, Y, and Z. And so having that attorney, it'll protect you and potentially give you a fighting chance and allowing you to understand that the landlord has his rights, but you have yours as well. And so doing this in upfront will not complicate things down the line. And both the landlord and the tenant will be on good understanding terms and have a longevity with each other. Going into our next section. So this is typically the do's and don'ts that we have when negotiating with the landlord. There's multiple areas along the leasing process where the professionals above will note and guide you through the best possible scenarios and also the worst possible scenarios. Through our experience, our team has been through both sides. We've seen where it goes flawlessly and there's no complications and everything was met within the timeline that was discussed. And then we've seen the worst case scenarios, and we'll go through some of those experiences and kind of how do we counteract that and ensure that we don't fall for them. It is important to, however, understand that the good and the bad of the leasing process is for you to own. You have to fully own this process and really be have the right team to understand how to counteract or avoid or just what is your responsibility and how the transaction is going to look like from here on out. So our first do is hire professionals. You do not have to go through this alone. We've seen people try to go with the landlord and then the landlord begins to price gouge them, or they write a lease that's not very understandable or the language isn't quite clear. And there's just too much at stake. And you usually only get one or two chances to really push this forward and stay within that timeline. So do your homework, ask around, find the best people that have this particular focus, that they're in the cannabis and they're also locally. So we always recommend hiring a professional, whether it's your real estate agent, your attorney, your contractor. Hire someone who's been through the process and they've seen it all from the worst to the best scenarios. Do your homework. With that in mind, no one will care as much about your business as yourself, and no one's going to care about the location more than you. You understand yourself. You understand the city parameters. So do your homework up front and really understand who you're going to hire, what locations you're going to go after, and research heavily. Understand the density, understand the traffic flow, understand the visibility of your location, how to market and how to connect with the community, how to be able to show them, hey, we're here, let's educate you, let's have these conversations with the city, with the landlord, and being able to be being prepared up front. Anytime a landlord asks a question, the community or the city, you'll be ready. They'll know that you're a professional, that you understand what you're doing, and they're going to be much more comfortable with you since you understand and you were able to educate them. So again, always do your homework. Make sure that you understand the parameters, the zoning. Ask the city questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Become a professional of your business, of your area, and you'll see that things aren't as complicated and that you're able to move with a little bit more relaxation. And again, doing your homework is going to involve hiring the right professionals and letting them teach you, but at the same time, you teaching them about your business and what you're looking for within that area. Understanding where you can operate within a jurisdiction. Where you can operate within the jurisdiction, it's your job to understand where the cannabis business can be placed. There's resources with DCR, there's maps that are going to show you where the approved areas are for your cannabis business, and overall understanding where you are is going to save you time and money. These requirements typically are going to be stated by the DCR. Some cities will tell you, hey, this is the zoning that you can do. You can't be within 600 to 700 feet, and it varies by different cities of these types of tenants. Your building has to have X, Y, and Z, or it has to have a sign. So understand the jurisdiction and what's surrounding you, understanding the tenants next to you as well. Along with the jurisdiction is when you're choosing this site selection and speaking to the landlord, educate them, let them know that, hey, through the map, we've been confirmed that we can be in this area. We do not see any other type of cannabis player within the area. There's no restrictions on tenants that can be around us. And so we're allowed in this area. And show them the way you did your homework, show them that the city is going to really allow you to blossom here and be successful. And again, the proof is in the pudding, right? So if you're able to be transparent, if you're able to show them these jurisdiction maps, show them that the parameters are met by his location, it'll allow you to have a conversation with them. And it will make them much more calm when approaching you, and it'll remove those negative stigmas that they tend to have. Understand your market and your customer. So this means who is your end consumer? Who's going to enter your business establishment? Put yourself in those shoes. Would you like to shop in that area, right? So understanding your customer. Typically, there's studies out there that'll show you the age groups or the demographics that are going to be the driving point of your business. So do your research in the area. Really understand the demographics, the age group, the type of people that are there. Find different studies that show you that the cannabis use there is up and coming, that it's used to educate people, or that there's medicinal benefits to it. Understand your market and your customer, and show them that you're there for them and that you're there to provide the service that they're looking for. If you choose in an area that's not too likely walked, or that it's more industrious, that won't be a benefit to you. Being stuck with other industrial users will just mean that there's large corporations there that are just trying to get in and out and move their product. But if you go into a location that's more lively, has more entertainment, has additional sporting events right there, like the Staples Center or some type of baseball field or anything like that, understanding that portion of the market will allow you to drive clientele to your space, will allow you to make new clientele, and overall just have a steady influx of customers. Be as professional and corporate as possible. So I really want to highlight this portion with the negative stigmas that, and again, they're being removed as time goes by, but the cannabis industry is relatively young, and there are a lot of people who do not fully understand it yet. So present your business and yourself as professional and corporate manner as possible. What does this mean? It doesn't mean you have to wear a suit or you have to wear a tie and you have to have all this lingo, but it just means you understand your product. You're able to communicate and educate the surrounding community and landlords, that you understand what you're doing, you understand the product, and that you have a business plan to move forward. Landlords love to see that you have a plan, and it's not just, hey, I want to put a cannabis business here because it's going to go well, right? Well, why is it going to go well? Do you have a business statement? Are you able to provide a little bit more information behind your background and why you got into this. And you know, do you have any experience with this? What certifications do you have? The more that we can answer those questions and the more we're polished behind those questions, it'll give you a fighting chance with the landlord in the city and overall with investors as well. It'll show them that you're really, you know, you've done your homework, you're really on top of everything, and that you treat your business in the highest regard. So this is one of the biggest mistakes we've seen with people as well. Do not get your heart set on just one location. It is very, very important to view multiple locations in multiple areas. Typically, retailers will only move forward with a very small percentage of properties that they see. What does that mean? In the past, about a year ago, 2 years ago, we had 3 clients looking in different areas all throughout Los Angeles. And what we saw is landlords are pretty difficult to work with in general, whether it's a cannabis tenant or just a different industry user. And we made a list of 120 different locations. And we were calling every single landlord. We were trying to get meetings. We were trying to go view these locations. And from those 120 locations, we found 3 locations that could potentially work for us, that met all the parameters, that met our budget, that's going to meet our timeline, and it would give us a great success. With those 3 locations, we always recommend to approach all of them and start the negotiating process, or at least the offering process. When you meet these landlords, you don't have to commit to anything. You can have the conversations with them and let them know, hey, we're very interested in this location. We'd love to see if we can strike a deal with you, and then go through that process. If you're doing that with 2 or 3 other locations, you can definitely now find out, will these locations meet my budget? Will they meet my timeline? Am I comfortable with the landlord? Giving yourselves a plan A, B, and C will give you a higher success chance. And so do not disqualify a location just because it doesn't meet all the parameters, your specific parameters, and the way it looks, or you don't really like the area. Give it a chance and just make an offer. It's not binding. You want to give yourself the benefit of the doubt, right? And then you don't know how that negotiation is going to go down the line. Potentially, the more you talk to the landlord, you're going to see that maybe the first landlord, he was really great to work with, but his budget was just it was just too high. The second landlord might let you know that you're within their budget, but the timeline to turn over the space might just take a little too long. But then the third landlord might give you all 3. And so engaging all of them, will be able to see what's the ultimate offer that they're going to give you, the TIs, and then you can make a well-informed decision in deciding, okay, I have these 3 options. The best chance that I'm going to have is with this, option C. And you go with option C, and then option A and B is still on the back burner, but in case option C doesn't work, then you can still pivot to a different location and not lose any time with them and already have some type of process started with them. So always view multiple locations, give yourself a fighting chance, and view different areas. You might see something later on that you didn't see on the first time around. The more you explore it, the more you see it, the more ideas it'll give you. And you'll be able to decide, hey, does this work for us, right? Now, the least strategies of the don'ts. Do not ignore legal help. A lease is a legally binding document with financial and legal ramifications. It's not a document to be taken lightly, and that's why we always recommend before signing any lease or any document with the landlord to meet with an attorney and ensure that it's not going to be a pitfall for you down the line, right? Even law firms that do not specialize in real estate tend to hire their own real estate attorneys to review their own leases. So do not ignore the help. Hire a real estate professional, and even better yet, if you can find a real estate professional that understands the cannabis side, they'll be able to navigate you and really show you, hey, don't do not sign that because the landlord can take away the location due to this line within the subsection clause of responsibility. So do not ignore the help. Let them navigate you through that lease and ensure that that lease is going to benefit you at the end. Do not forget about potential neighbors. The business next to yours will be there day in and day out. And you need to be able to approach their space with the fullest respect and let them know that who you are, what you're there to do, and what synergy you're going to create for them. Again, the community and the landlords, the cannabis industry is very new, and you want to be able to educate them and let them know that you're only going to provide value and that you will drive clientele into there, right? And again, a lease typically is 3 to 5 years, and you're going to be next to them. So you want to create great synergy, make them very comfortable, and potentially pass off different clientele to each other. So having respect for your neighbors, understanding what type of tenants you'll be next to it's going to be very beneficial to you. So for example, the best won't a tenant like tax services or a small clinic, they might not be the best tenants to be next to each other. There's no synergy, or there's you don't share the same type of clientele. But maybe a coffee shop or some type of pastry shop, or having services that deal with medical pain or chiropractic. These neighbors might be a little bit better to create a synergy, which will create some comfortability within each other. And you won't feel like you're devaluing the location, but rather bringing value to them. I do not expect a quick process through here. So we've seen people think, once we sign the lease, we'll be able to, be up and running in 3 months. And so they'll let the landlord know, hey, don't worry about it. We'll be up and running in 3 months. But site selection and leasing process, they can take a couple of months to over a year. Really honing in and understanding the market and understanding the people that are going to be around you, the type of landlord that you want to be. It could take a couple of months. It could take a couple of months of just understanding who's going to let you be there, right? Or is this area, fitting for ourselves? It's going to have a huge impact on your business. So you want to take your time with it and really understand the process, the timeline, and overall, do you see yourself having longevity there? So take your time. Don't force yourself to go in to a lease just because time is running out. Understand that this will take a while, from getting the location approved to having the lease negotiated to having a build out process. This all takes some time. So allocate, a few months up to a year to really be able to understand, will I be able to work well here? And is it within my budget? And am I able to last this long as well? Do not sign a lease until you have all your licenses in place and connect with the city. What do we mean by this? You don't have to wait to sign the lease or you don't have to wait for your license to sign the lease and connect with the city. Once the lease is signed, you're going to be responsible for the financial consideration and other factors. So triple check that you're able to get the necessary permits, the necessary license, but at the same time, keep moving forward. Just because you're not permitted doesn't mean that you can't create a timeline with the landlord and let them know, hey, can you hold off on the lease? Or, we're working on this license, and help them understand where you're at the process, and say, in 6 months, I think we're going to be able to get the license, but we do want some type of leeway. Are we able to hold the space in any way where it'll benefit me to get the license first and then move forward, right? So do not wait to do that. And lastly, do not overpay as well. There's such widespread information that the cannabis business does not have a limit on spending. This is usually called the cannabis tax, or what we call it in our office, the cannabis tax, where they think, where landlords think that the cannabis tenant should pay some type of premium. And we just think it's wrong overall. You shouldn't be expected to pay beyond the market price for any type of space or negotiation. Overall, it's not just immoral, but it's bad business practices, right? So your lease is going to be a fixed expense. And if it's too high, it's going to take a tremendous toll on your cash flow, right? And so every single time we've gone to a landlord, we've had them try to do some type of premium and saying, hey, typically the place is, $3,000, but since you're cannabis, it's going to be $6,000. Negotiate, let your agent know that you have a budget and that you do not want to go over that budget. So really negotiate with them. And we've seen that with pushbacks and educating them and letting them know that you're just like any other business. You're able to bring that premium down and go to market rate as well. So don't let them gouge you at that. Have your team help you with that. Don't settle for the wrong location in the space, city, or landlord. Patience is key. Leases can run for many, many years. So it's critical that you choose the right location. Once you have that lease, you're going to be obligated to follow up with that lease and make those financial responsibilities. So do not settle for the wrong location. Take your time and really figure out, does it meet my parameters, and are we going to be able to make this? And also don't forget about the parking and the access. Your customers are going to need to be able to get to you and park. Don't overlook the importance of parking simply because the space is approved. Your space can be approved all day, but if your clients can't get there, or if it's not easy access, they might just overlook you and then go to the competitor, right? So ensure that you have enough parking and enough access for yourself, for your employees, and your customers. One thing we wanted to bring up too is the landlord's viewpoint. Some things to consider from a potential landlord or the cannabis use tenant. It's going to be, most cannabis related tenants are going to have to adhere to more regulatory requirements than any other real estate tenant. There's going to be a lot of misconceptions about adding a cannabis tenant to your tenant mix or a single tenant to any of your commercial assets. So the matter of fact is that these tenants are going to have to adhere by the elements of the city and other retail uses. So really let them know about the regulatory requirements that you're supposed to follow, and let them know that it's a very sophisticated process, that everything is going to be improved, that the build outs you're going to do are going to be approved, and they all have to follow the parameters set by the city. And so they should be very comfortable in understanding that they're not just receiving a cannabis tenant, but their building value is going to improve, that the strength of the tenant is going to be of high regards, that, we've been approved by the city, we have the right requirements, and overall the build outs that we're going to do are going to be to drive customers into our facility altogether. So let them understand that the strength that you're going to bring and the value that they're going to bring to them, and overall their building value, that the improvements that you're going to put are going to be very, very beneficial to them. And with ending on the lease do's and don'ts, we'll move over to the offering process, right? So we now understand the typical players from the community to the landlord, that we need to be able to approach them, that we need to be able to educate them and let them know why we're there, what type of value we're going to bring to them, and also understand the different benefits that you're going to do, putting on these different educational webinars, or even just inviting them to be, your guest for the day and showing them why you're there. So after understanding the site selection process, the different players, the team members that you have to hire, they're going to navigate you through the offering process and ensure that you're not getting price gouged, and that you're going to be following the right set of rules to ensure that you have a tidy lease. So how does that offering process start? It's going to start with first the LOI, which is a non-binding letter of intent, as it's usually referred to. And then it'll move over to the financial tenant application. This usually requires the proof of credit worthiness, and overall it's going to show the strength of the business. And also, what are your future plans? What can the landlord expect from you, and what can the community expect from you? And then you'll be able to also show your financial documentation and show that you will be able to last 5 years, and you're going to be able to make your responsibilities for that lease. The third portion is going to be the lease. This is where the groups are going to negotiate a legally binding lease form and lease guarantee form. And to help provide context to all these steps, it's going to also let you know what's your responsibilities and what's the landlord's responsibilities as well. And following the lease, typically it's going to be who's going to guarantee this lease. Landlords, they already have a bad stigma on the tenant. So we want to help them understand that we have a backing, we have the funding, and overall, we're part of a program that's here to assist us as well, right? So let's go into details for these different sections. The letter of intent is going to be a 2 to 4 page document that's going to be written up by either your attorney, but typically the agent. This is not a binding offer. It should not be a binding offer, but more so you presenting what you'd like to do with that location and spell out all the business terms and, typically the rate that you're going to do. The lease is going to be built off this LOI, and it's usually negotiated off the LOI. So typically the landlord and the tenant, they're going to make their offer, they're going to understand what terms are going to follow, and then that's going to be added to the legal lease, and this is where we'll start working on the terms. LOIs, they're always going to follow the main aspects. So again, you really want to emphasize and be transparent on how long you're going to be there, what you're looking for, what you're going to do for the value of the community and for the building. And it's good to give yourself a bio, give them a bio about yourself and let them know what your intentions are and how you're going to perform those responsibilities as well. Some of the elements, just to go quickly through these, is you have to let them know that you're the tenant, right? Who's going to be leasing this? Who's going to be guaranteeing this? The lease premise as well. Why are you leasing it? What's being leased? And kind of give a background on the area and the market and why you think it's going to be beneficial for you to be there. Ensure that the site you located is going to have the right square footage. So write in the square footage that you're going after. Typically, a building can be multiple tenants. So let them know how much space do you need and how much space you might need in the future as well, right? You want to start those conversations right off the bat. You want to let them know about the use as well. In this case, it's going to be retail cannabis. Give them a background on, why you're retail cannabis. What does that entail to have a tenant with retail cannabis? And let them know that as a cannabis tenant, you've already followed up with, the parameters from the city, that you've already connected with the community, that you're going to have educational seminars, you're going to have different marketing ploys to bring people there, and to overall show them that your use is going to bring value. Going into the term, ensure that you understand how many years you want to go into that. When you're doing a site selection and finding the perfect location, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and ask for 5 years right off the bat, especially if you're a new tenant coming in. So try to negotiate with the landlord and see how much leeway do you need. Is this a test run? Are you trying to see if you can stabilize it before going inside? So, ensure that you can make it for those years. So if you ask for 1 year, ask for a couple more options and give yourself some breathing room, right? If you're confident that you can move forward with a 3-year lease and, really give a good offer, then write in those 3 years, right? But ensure that you understand the responsibility and the amount of years you're going to be there. Because again, you're trying to create longevity, but you also don't want to run out of funds. On the rent commencement, this is when the tenant starts paying rent. What we always recommend is do not start the rent so far ahead or so early on. Give yourself some breathing room and ask for those free months and ask for some leeway. Typically, we like to ask for about 6 to 9 months of free rent. It's going to depend on the term that you ask, but you want to ask for as many months, and don't be afraid to ask for those months, right? You have to go through the permitting process. You have to get the location approved already, right? So you want to push back paying that rent as much as possible and really give yourself some breathing room, because again, you have to build out your space. You have to take on all the attorneys or any of the fees that you have to pay in. So give yourself some breathing room. So try to push it out as much as possible. And typically a way to do that is if you can't pay it up front, then pay it at the back end. Add those months to the back end of the uh, lease. And then the base lease rent as well, right? The amount of square foot paid to rent the space. Now, what does this mean? You do not want to get price gouged, so you're going to have your professional understand what's the market rates there and ensure that they're not gouging you and trying to get you to do a premium. So just some quick maths on how that works. If you have $1 per square foot and the space is 100 square feet, then the monthly base rent will be $100, right? So if you have a professional do the market analysis and see what the typical range is, this will allow you to do your budget and understand what area you're going to go into, right? So if there's 3 different areas within a zone, and you're seeing that the market rate is $4 in one area, $2 in another, and $1 in the third area, maybe it's beneficial to only look into the $1 area for now and see what type of locations you can come up with. This will assist you with your budget, and it will allow you to put, more funds towards the construction build out and give you a little bit more breathing room. Understand when you're finding a location that since this is a retail location, typically landlords are going to ask for a triple net. This is the amount of money that the landlord will charge for the tenant for the proportionate share of their property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, right? So how does this typically look like? You're going to have the base rent, right? And then they're going to let you know to what is the triple net. So for example, on 1,000 square foot space, if the base rent is $1 per foot, that means that our base rent is going to be about $1,000. But if you're now adding those additional costs and the landlord lets you know that's going to be about 10 cents a square foot, we have to be able to add those together and notice what the base rent is and what those additional costs are. So if it's 10 cents and for the triple nets and there's 1,000 square feet, that typically means that you're going to have about $100 extra every month to pay on top of the $1,000, right? And so being able to understand this will help you with your budgeting. We've seen tenants go in and not understand what a triple net is, and they don't ask the landlord what the triple net is, and so they'll receive these additional charges after signing the lease and understand, hey, I don't understand why you gave me this additional rent, and they're going to let you know, well, it's for the insurance and for, X, Y, and Z. So understand this so you don't overprice your budget and you don't have that pitfall. Escalations, this is going to be how much inflation goes up during the month. So this is typically 3 to 4%, and it's going to go along with the cost of living and increased inflation. Options as well. This details if you have any additional terms after the base term of the lease. Therefore, you can extend your lease overall. So if you do a 3-year lease and you have 2 options for 1 year, that means every single 2 years and then followed by the single year, you're able to extend it and keep that same base term, but then give yourself an opportunity to extend that lease. Again, understand the parking, understand the regulations from the city, and ensure that you have the appropriate number of parking spaces for your retail component and that your clients will be able to go through. Landlord work as well. This is going to be the construction or improvements that the landlord will make to the space prior to handing the space off to the tenant. So what does this mean? We want them to give us the space in the best working condition that they can. This is going to allow you to save some on the budget and understand, can I save some money to do other things on the space? So if you can get the landlord to take on the HVAC or build out the space, then it'll ensure you that you have enough to push forward for the rent and not have to worry about building those locations out. The more the spaces improve, the easier the permits will be able to go, and you can do more cosmetic improvements altogether. And then tenant work, this is just the work that you're going to be doing in the improvements. Ensure that you know the parameters and what you're going to be doing to the space and know if it's going to be allowed by the city. Free rent, this is going to be any months of free rent that the tenant is going to request and the landlord's going to forgive. So again, we always request that you ask for as much free rent. You don't know what the landlord's thinking, so always ask. And typically it's going to be a couple of months, or it's going to go with how many years you do. So if you have 4 years of term, then that means typically they'll give you about 4 months of free rent. So always fight for that and see if you can push for free rent or some type of interim rent where you can pay those on the back end of the half to help you stabilize that business early on. Security deposit. So this is going to be the amount of down payment and deposit that you're going to need to enter the lease. It's very important to understand what the landlord's going to ask for and ensure that you're not going to get gouged on this. We've seen landlords try to ask for an egregious deposit, which puts you in a hole right off the bat. Typically, depending on your credit worthiness, but it's going to be the first and last months of the rent, right? And so landlords would try to either 3x that or 4x that, trying to say that your cannabis tenant, they're taking a lot of risk with you. But since you're going to be permitted, you're going through the right ways, always push back on that. You do not want them to have an egregious deposit. Sometimes we do see it just because the tenant is asking for additional months. They're going to ask for about 9-10 months rather than 3-4 months. So you can give that up front, but you do not want to be gouged on that side. So be very careful in what you do and hold your ground when giving that deposit. Lastly on the lease is going to be the guarantor. This is just going to be the entity who's going to guarantee and provide the responsibility for the finances as well. Here we're just showing what a financial tenant application typically looks like. You're going to want your accountant or your banker to fill this out for you and give you the best fighting chance in showing how good your funds are and being able to explain that story behind it. Here's another example of the financial application. And then again, just reiterating the lease, it's going to be the most important part of the negotiation. There's going to be legal documents that carry legal and financial operation consequences. The lease can range anywhere between 6 to 100 pages. And again, we recommend the legal professionals helping you with this. You really want to understand what you're doing there. And reiterating again, the lease guarantee. This is going to state the entity or the individual guaranteeing the lease that's taking on the financial responsibility. Get a legal professional to help you understand what's going to be your responsibility and overall what can you expect for the next 5 years or whatever term that you're putting together. And so with that, that'll be our last slide for the webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brown to begin the Q&A session as well.
All right, all right. Thank you so much, Elias. That was so thought-provoking and very helpful and time-sensitive. Okay, why don't we get right into the Q&A? First question, is there a list of potential locations that are not sensitive use?
So we typically get asked this question. There's not any particular official list that is given to landlords or to tenants, but what we've seen is when you find a real estate professional that is in the cannabis industry, they'll typically make these lists themselves and have a lot of different pre-vetted locations that they know fits the zoning, that they know that the applications haven't been fulfilled. And so there's still a number of spaces that they can. So there's no specific list, but when you meet with the agent, they'll be able to make that list for you and understand and pre-vet, hey, cannabis is allowed here. The landlord is very aligned with this location. I think it's worth approaching them as well. What we've also seen too is when you have your agent search, if a landlord knows their cannabis ready or they're available, they themselves will put that out there. So when you do these searches through LoopNet or CoStar or Prexy, if you type in as your keyword is cannabis, it'll begin populating with locations that they know the landlord is offering. Again, these lists, they're very helpful, but we always recommend once they present them to you, you do your due diligence and follow up with the city and let them know, hey, it's been advertised as this. Are you sure that I can come here? And then you'll be able to get your responses.
Okay, a follow-up to that, Elias. When an entrepreneur is seeking out a realtor to help them find a commercial property, in your experience, are realtors, are they conversant in sensitive use? I mean, do they understand the 700-foot sensitive use situation? And do they understand what those rules are so that they can look at property that isn't 700 feet from a school or a park or another dispensary? Are there like cannabis, real estate agents that focus specifically in the cannabis space?
Yes, so most realtors or agents that are going to be working in that space, they'll be very well versed in understanding what the parameters are. And so when they're presenting things to you, they'll point those things out right away. They'll say the reason this works is there's no daycares, there's no libraries or churches nearby, there's no other cannabis application waiting within this area. They'll pre-vet it prior to letting you know. But again, that's why we recommend you interview the real estate agent and try to choose from a local or regional firm that has that agent in that area. They'll usually be very well versed with the parameters and they will point you in the right direction. So they should be able to show you that. So interview as many as you can and ask them that question. Or do you understand the parameters? And have them prove that to you, right? And then every time you go through that process, have them do the checklist and show you, hey, this, it meets all the parameters because of X, Y, and Z.
Great, great, great. Okay, next question. Can a landlord force me to leave a deposit to hold a property?
So I very upfront, they cannot force you to do anything. So if you're uncomfortable with any type of term that they're giving you, it's always best to have your agent either push back or have your attorneys push back. Now, the unfortunate part, though, is we've seen a lot of deals go down that way in the sense where the landlord knows you're not going to be able to open up for 8 or 9 months. And they're going to complain to you and say, I have to hold this space. I'm going to lose money not marketing it. And so they'll say, give me an 8-month deposit and I'll hold it. And if it doesn't go through, I get to keep your deposit. So that's why we highly recommend you always push back on that and let them know, no, we can start the lease up front. We're going to ask for free rent. You're going to get the deposit. We can potentially give you an extra month, but they cannot force you to do that. So always hold your guns and really push forward and stick to the budget that you're there. I know that locations are limited, but it's not worth the time and money to be gouged by the landlord and then go through the process, not receive it, not get your funds back, and then starting from point 8 again. So always push back and do not let them push you over 3 or 4 months. We've seen that way too much, and it typically destroys your application right up front. So you're a regular tenant, treat yourself as such, and stick to the regular terms. Now, deposits are common, but you don't want to get gouged through them. Try to stick to the first and last months always.
Great. I know you touched on some of this in your presentation, but here's a similar question to what you've already presented. What is a good way to approach landlords who may be hesitant to lease their property to a cannabis business?
So I typically found that having, we discussed being as corporate and professional as possible. And what does that mean? Having some type of brochure or deck discussing the bio of who you guys are, why you're in the area, why do you like the area, and then discussing the community outreach that you'll be doing in that, how you're going to approach the additional tenants, how you're going to provide additional security, and overall the value that you're going to bring through the build out. Cannabis tenants, the landlords that I've represented that have taken on cannabis tenants, it most of the time we've seen they're like the most problem-free tenants because they're able to keep up on their rent. They're constantly communicating what the rules are, the changes of the regulations. They provided their different, permits. They're showing that they're part of this program that's allowing them to do that. And so the landlords feel educated. They typically start saying, hey, we want another tenant just like them because they make us feel comfortable. They tell us everything. They're being very transparent with us. So when you approach them, have some type of story. Let them know that you're part of this program, educate them, tell them that you're an open book, let them know what your business plan is for the next 5 years, and overall, show them the support that you're going to try to build with the community by doing these seminars or just having a day where, you have the community come in and you guys are educating everyone, showing that you're going to be very engaged with his tenants, bringing the security to the community is going to be very helpful. And we tend to get a positive response from that.
Great. Now, speaking of engagement with community, what kind of engagement strategies should cannabis businesses use to provide and gain support from the community?
We've seen that the one of the best routes is showing the medicinal use behind it and just educating them that it's not just recreational, and invite the community into it and have different types of things, like whether it's a drawing class or showing them. I think we had a client one time, they were going to show them, what's the medicinal use behind it and how to, roll your own little joints or anything like that, and showing them that there's nothing wrong with participating with cannabis and that there's a lot of benefits behind it. So education is usually the highest form of admiration to the community. So doing marketing, webinars, or inviting them to your page, or sending out little flyers to the nearby tenants and letting them know that you're there, and that if they ever need help, that you're willing to try something with them, right? So flyers, digital marketing, just going door to door to the surrounding tenants, it tends to get a pretty positive review. So just including them in what you guys are doing and having your story out there. And then overall, just having a good marketing package where your sign is very inviting, very friendly, having a great name, having some type of name that involves, something fun or educational or health benefits. We see that it gets a positive reaction.
I also would recommend being involved in your neighborhood council and go to
Yes.
their meetings and ask questions and answer questions. People who are going after their annual license, you have to have comments, and you have to have gone to the neighborhood council and given them notice. And so, but just don't go for that. Become a part of the community.
Yeah.
I think you'll see a lot more, right? Positive response when go to these meetings, and you can understand the concerns, and you can answer questions before it becomes a real problem.
Mm-hmm. And to add on to there, going to those events, I think it's very, very important, not just being part of the Chamber of Commerce or meeting with your councilman, but when they put on an event, just show them and say, hey, we are in support of this city. We want to be part of this city, and show face everywhere you go, and let them know what you do as well, right? And showing them that, hey, not only are, your personality wise, you're a very good person, but the product you're bringing, you're doing it in such an organic way that we feel comfortable being here because you're participating with us and showing us you're just like everyone else.
Okay, great. Next question. Are there any formal policies or safeguards against price gouging on leasing costs? Any formal policies?
The unfortunate part is there really isn't any formal policies. And even though it tends to be driven by the market rates around there, at the end of the day, the landlord can come in and say, this is what I want. If we can't strike a deal here, we're just not going to take it. But do not fall for those tactics. We at the last 3 leases that I've done, they've all been trying to price gouge. And even then, they've still taken a little bit of a premium on top of what they're coming, because due to the timing or just the location that they're taking. But there's no policies protecting the cannabis tenants. And so what we always recommend is have an attorney, have your team, and have a good negotiator on your side. If your attorney and your agent can negotiate for you and really show them, hey, this is the market rates, what you're asking for is egregious. What we think is we should land here. What we can typically do is we don't want to do the pricing, but we can extend the lease. We could potentially extend the lease, have a longer term, or give something back in the form of instead of free rent, we'll do abatement. For the first 9 months, we won't ask for free rent, but we're going to ask, instead of paying the typical market rate of $3,000, we'll hold the space for $1,000 a month. You'll still feel comfortable enough saying that we're giving you some sort of compensation for it, but then we'll go to the market rate. And then every 3-4 years, we can have a fair escalation that either meets the market rate and hold us there. We don't want to go over that, but be very, very mindful of your business and your budget, right? Because as soon as you get that premium going, they're always going to gouge you, and every year it's going to try to go up altogether.
Great. Okay, 2 more questions. What considerations should be made for utilities and infrastructure when developing a cannabis property? That's a big question.
Yeah, so that's why we always say hire a good contractor. Right now, one of the things, a business tactic that one of our clients used was we needed more free rent up front, and the HVAC wasn't working, and it seemed like the utilities were off market, so was the water. And so we tried to say, hey, we'll take on the HVAC, but you have to lower the rent altogether and give us this amount of free months. And so having a contractor going in there and first checking on the electricity, ensuring that you have enough and that can support your, HVACs, your airflow that's required by the city, and understanding, hey, this building is going to require X amount of funds to be able to upbring this. The utilities can't support your building, so you're going to dig a hole, yourself into a hole. So ensure that you have all the working systems, whether it's security, HVAC, the water and plumbing, having enough for the restroom and for your employees, and meeting those parameters from the DCR and the city. It's very, very important to understand that you do have that electricity, because at the end of the day, if you don't have an HVAC that can turn over that airflow, I think they're gonna dock you, or the inspector might not pass that altogether. So you have to be able to control anything that's coming out of that building. So ensure that your electricity can meet your demands, and that there's enough water as well, just to meet the plumbing issues.
Okay, thank you. All right, our last question is, does the California Association of Realtors have a cannabis division?
So they don't have an official division, but what we've seen is different agents will kind of create their own agency, or they'll say to themselves, hey, we are the industry professionals of cannabis. So one of the ones we've seen is Cannabis Realtors. If you literally type in Cannabis Realtors, the first thing that will come up is a web page that has all the different industry giants and people who are currently participating in some type of negotiation, or their landlords have a number of properties or a portfolio that goes just to cannabis users. So they typically will only stay in that industry. So you will be able to find somebody that's licensed and very well versed in the real estate of cannabis. So no real agency or association, but there are groups out there that dedicate themselves to just cannabis. So you should be able to find some, and we recommend, visiting all the local ones that are to Los Angeles and interviewing as many as you can.
Great. Wow, that was a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elias. That was just fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Folks, all of this is going to be uploaded into the LMS after editing. I also wanted to make you guys aware that part of our webinar, part of our business licensing compliance and technical assistance training, we're going to have a live in-person training session on October 10th. And it's going to be at Friendship Auditorium. It's right at Griffith Park. It's called Perfecting Your Pitch Deck and Identifying Financing. It's free to the public, and we're also going to have a voter registration drive. You can come and register to vote and get some great information. So please go on our website to see the flyer, free parking. It's going to be really a very exciting day, so I hope you all will join us. So again, thank you, Elias, for your time. We really appreciate all of the wisdom that you shared with us and best practices. Thank you again. And with that, I will bid everyone good night. Thank you so much.